As soon as Bill Barr stepped into the high-ceilinged congressional hearing chamber, it was clear that this would be no ordinary testimony. The air was thick with anticipation, reporters' fingers hovering over keyboards, camera shutters clicking in rapid bursts. Barr, the once formidable former Attorney General under 2 presidents, strode into the room with the heavy presence of a man accustomed to wielding power unchecked. His gait was deliberate, his face set in a stoic mask, and his dark suit seemed to absorb the tension in the room. He carried the weight of his legacy on his shoulders, one built on decades inside Washington's most powerful institutions. And now, that very legacy was about to be put on trial. What he didn't know, what none of his aides had prepared him for, was that seated across the room was Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, the fast-rising political star from Texas, whose quiet intensity masked a meticulously prepared arsenal of evidence. She was not there to grandstand. She was there to dismantle, in what would become the most devastating political cross-examination in recent memory. Crockett would deliver a performance that would not only strip away Barr's carefully constructed public image, but also potentially end any remaining influence he hoped to wield in American political life. "Mr. Barr," Crockett began, her voice calm but charged with electricity, the kind that precedes a thunderstorm. Her tone carried no hesitation, only surgical precision. "You've spent the past several years accusing members of this body, my colleagues, and myself, of spreading falsehoods about your actions while in office. Today, I intend to lay out, with clear and irrefutable evidence, exactly who the real liar is." The atmosphere in the room shifted in an instant. The collective rustle of paper stopped. The audience leaned forward. Even the seasoned members of Congress, those used to the ebb and flow of political theater, could feel that this was different. Barr, who had entered the chamber exuding confidence, straightened in his seat, the corners of his mouth twitching slightly as his trademark smirk faltered. This was supposed to be routine, standard partisan skirmish. Another headline moment for C-SPAN and cable news. Instead, it was fast becoming a high-stakes reckoning. What Barr didn't know was that Crockett had spent over a year quietly and methodically building her case. She had submitted dozens of FOIA requests, conducted back-channel interviews with former DOJ officials, cross-checked timelines, and pieced together contradictions buried deep within public records and sworn testimonies. Unlike many of her peers, who relied heavily on staff-prepared notes, Crockett had personally reviewed every line of every document. Her preparation bordered on obsession, not for spectacle, but for justice. She wasn't just questioning a witness, she was conducting a prosecution, and Barr, the man who had once controlled the levers of the Justice Department, was now about to be buried by its records. So before we dive deeper into this stunning political showdown, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because moments like this don't just make headlines, they make history. The hearing opened with the usual formalities: committee members welcoming the witness, laying out procedural guidelines, but it was clear the real event would begin when the microphone was passed to Crockett. A few Republican members began the session with predictably softball questions, offering Barr space to defend himself, rehearse his legacy, and frame himself as the wise elder statesman under attack by radical partisans. He responded with calm confidence, leaning into every response like he was teaching a masterclass on survival under scrutiny. But all of that changed the moment the chair recognized Congresswoman Crockett. She adjusted the mic, leaned forward, and locked eyes with Barr like a trial attorney about to cross-examine a hostile witness. "Mr. Barr," she began, her words slow and deliberate, "you've spent the better part of 3 years telling the American people that every criticism of your conduct as Attorney General has been nothing more than partisan noise, that the investigations into your actions were witch hunts, and that those of us questioning your integrity were simply playing politics." Barr nodded slightly, as if eager to get to his well-rehearsed defense. "I have always conducted myself with the utmost integrity," he replied smoothly. "These attacks are merely politically motivated attempts to undermine the legitimacy of the Department of Justice." But Crockett wasn't moved. She didn't flinch. She reached for a folder, thick with documents marked with highlighter and color-coded tabs. "Then I trust you won't mind if we walk through a few very specific moments from your tenure, starting with a sworn affidavit from a former DOJ official who directly contradicts your claims under oath. We'll also examine an internal memo you failed to disclose, and a timeline that suggests you actively suppressed evidence during an ongoing federal investigation." Barr blinked. His fingers flexed slightly on the table. He had underestimated her, badly, and this was only the beginning. "So when Democrats accuse you of lying to Congress, we're the ones lying." Jasmine Crockett's voice was calm, but charged with precision. "Your accusations are baseless and designed to score political points rather than seek truth," William Barr replied, attempting to maintain his composure. But Crockett only smiled just barely. It wasn't a grin of amusement, but the poised smile of a seasoned prosecutor who knew she had cornered her subject and was just about to deliver the blow. "Mr. Barr," she began, her voice now carrying a quiet, sharpened authority. "Do you recall your May 1, 2019, testimony before this very committee regarding the Mueller report?" I've testified many times about the Mueller report, Barr responded, shifting slightly in his seat. You'll have to be more specific. You were asked by Congressman Charlie Crist whether Robert Mueller supported your conclusions. About the report, she continued, her tone unwavering. Do you remember how you answered? Barr's face remained stony, but a slight tightening around his jaw gave away the tension building beneath. I answered truthfully to the best of my understanding of the special counsel's position, he said carefully. Crockett didn't blink. Your exact words were, and I quote, I don't know whether Bob Mueller supported my conclusion, is that correct? If that's what the transcript says, Barr muttered, then yes. Crockett lifted a document for the cameras to see, holding it with the confidence of someone about to detonate a carefully constructed bombshell. Mr. Barr, I'd now like to read a letter Special Counsel Mueller sent you one day before your testimony. The entire room fell into a chilling hush. This letter, Crockett continued, was obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests and verified by multiple independent sources. It is not speculation. It is not political theater. It is fact. She read aloud. Dear Attorney General Barr, the summary letter the department sent to Congress and released to the public late in the afternoon of March 24th did not fully capture the context, nature, and substance of this office's work and conclusions. There is now public confusion about critical aspects of the results of our investigation. The air thickened. Members on both sides of the aisle leaned in. Even the Republicans looked blindsided. None of them had been briefed on any such letter. Crockett pressed forward. The letter goes on, we previously sent the executive summaries of our 2-volume report to the department on March 25th. We are requesting that you provide a supplemental or clarifying statement to correct the public record. It is signed, Robert S. Mueller III, Special Counsel. Gasps rippled across the hearing room. Staffers exchanged glances. Reporters began feverishly typing, their fingers racing across keyboards as though chasing history in real time. Mr. Barr, Crockett said, now with righteous fire building. Behind her words, when you told this committee that you didn't know whether Mueller supported your conclusions, you had already received a letter just the day before, clearly stating that he did not. So I'll ask you plainly, were you lying to Congress? Or are we to believe you suddenly developed a convenient memory lapse? Barr shifted again. He opened his mouth, closed it, then forced a response. Congresswoman, that letter concerned media interpretations, not the substance of my conclusions. Crockett cut in sharply. No, sir. The letter clearly states your summary failed to capture the context, nature, and substance of the report. That's not media spin. That's a direct accusation of misrepresentation. Barr's mask was beginning to crack. The beads of sweat now visible across his forehead glistened beneath the unforgiving glare of the hearing room lights. His voice, once confident and sonorous, faltered slightly. The special counsel was concerned about how the public might perceive the report. No, Crockett said firmly. He was concerned about your deliberate distortion of his findings. And you knew that when you came in here and testified otherwise. Representative Jim Jordan attempted to interrupt with a point of order, his voice raised in defense, but Chairman Jerry Nadler quickly shut it down. The gentlewoman from Texas has the floor, he said, voice clipped. She will finish her questioning. The tension was now unbearable. William Barr, the master of spin and seasoned veteran of countless congressional hearings, was visibly unraveling his hands, once confidently animated, now clenched the table. Behind him, aides scrambled, whispering urgently and sliding notes under his hand. But no note could save him from what was coming next. Let's move on. Crockett, said her voice cool and sharp. Mr. Barr, you've repeatedly claimed that the Department of Justice found no evidence of widespread voter fraud in the 2020 election. Is that correct? That is correct, Barr answered, a flicker of relief passing over his face. And you resigned from your post as Attorney General on December 23, 2020, citing personal reasons. Yes. Crockett paused, allowing the silence to stretch. Her eyes scanned her notes briefly, though everyone knew by now that she didn't need them. Mr. Barr, she said, her voice dropping a register, the room holding its collective breath. Before we continue, I want to establish something for the record. During your tenure as Attorney General, did you ever? The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon, and every camera in the room zoomed in. The trap had been set. What was coming next would not only expose one man, it would ignite a national conversation on truth, power, and accountability. Did President Trump ever issue direct orders regarding specific investigations or prosecutions? The question, clear and unambiguous, hung in the air like a blade. Attorney General William Barr's brows furrowed, a subtle signal of discomfort. This wasn't the line of questioning he had anticipated, and it showed. The President and I discussed various matters of national importance. Barr began, hoping to weave a diplomatic answer that avoided the minefield ahead, but I always maintained the independence of that's not what I asked. Mr. Barr, Crockett cut in, her tone razor. Yes or no? Did President Trump ever give you direct orders about investigations? Barr's mouth twitched. The President expressed his views on various matters. But Mr. Barr, Crockett interrupted again, her voice colder this time. I'm going to ask you one more time, and I want a simple yes or no. Did Donald Trump ever order you to take specific actions related to Justice Department investigations? On the Republican side of the chamber, unrest grew. Representative Matt Gaetz leaned into his mic, irritation evident. Mr. Chairman, the witness should be permitted to provide full answers. The witness will answer the question as asked. Chairman Nadler responded with stern finality, his gavel resting ominously in hand. Mr. Barr, please yes or no. Barr reached for his water glass, sipping slowly as the room watched. The delay felt deliberate. Finally he said, there were occasions when the president made his preferences known. So, that's a yes. Crockett responded swiftly. Thank you, Mr. Barr. She didn't wait for the stunned silence to settle. Now, I'd like to play a portion of a recorded conversation taken from a December 1, 2020 meeting you attended with President Trump. The recording was made by Cassidy Hutchinson, a former White House aide. The room shifted, chairs creaked, staffers leaned in. Even Democratic colleagues looked startled. In the recording, Crockett continued, President Trump is heard saying, Bill, I need you to find me votes. I don't care how you do it. And your response, Mr. Barr heisened, I quote, Mr. President, I understand what you need. Do you deny that this conversation took place? Barr's face went pale. For the first time that morning, the man, known for his composure, looked visibly shaken. He hesitated. Mr. Barr, Crockett said again, do you need me to play the recording for the committee? This is outrageous. Barr burst out, no longer hiding his frustration. I don't know where you got this alleged recording, but I categorically deny Mr. Barr. Crockett's voice sliced through his protest. Are you saying Cassidy Hutchinson, who testified under oath before the January 6th committee, and who has been publicly praised by your own party for her honesty, is lying? I'm saying I never agreed to anything of the sort. But you don't deny the conversation took place. Barr's eyes darted between committee members. He had walked into a trap, and he knew it. If he denied the meeting altogether, the recording could be played. If he confirmed it but claimed innocence, she would ask why he never reported it. Either way, his credibility was slipping through his fingers. The context of any conversation would be important, he tried, his voice weaker now. Mr. Barr, Crockett pressed. Yes or no? Did President Trump ask you to find votes to overturn the 2020 election? The room had gone completely silent, the kind of stillness that happens when history is being written. The only sounds were camera shutters clicking like distant drums. And then it happened. Barr, realizing he could no longer avoid the point, attempted a final pivot. Congresswoman, he said, trying to steady his tone. You're taking things out of context and relying on what I believe may be illegally obtained recordings. Are you now accusing a former White House aide of illegal conduct? Crockett asked, unfazed. Because I should note that Miss Hutchinson had full legal authority to document meetings as part of her official duties. So again, are you accusing her of a crime? I'm saying your entire line of questioning is a politically motivated attack? No, sir, Crockett thundered. This isn't political theater. This is accountability, something you clearly believed you'd never face. Then she stood. In her hands was a thick binder, heavy with pages that spoke of months of investigation. Mr. Barr, she continued, lifting the binder for the room to see. You want to talk about political motivation? Let's discuss yours. The room, already tense, exploded with reaction. Republicans called for points of order. Democrats demanded the documents. Chairman Nadler was now banging his gavel furiously, struggling to maintain control. But Crockett was unstoppable. These are sworn affidavits from 7 former Justice Department officials, she declared, who worked under Mr. Barr. These officials describe a consistent, alarming pattern of obstruction, political interference, and deceit that goes all the way to the top. Barr's mouth opened slightly, but no words came. You delayed the Roger Stone sentencing recommendation until after the 2020 election, Crockett said. You overruled career prosecutors in the Michael Flynn case, and worst of all, you personally reviewed and approved talking points designed to discredit the Mueller investigation. Each sentence hit like a hammer. Gasps filled the chamber. Some members of the press began typing furiously, others simply stared. In that moment, it wasn't just a hearing, it was a reckoning, and William Barr, the former Attorney General of the United States, was no longer the one holding the gavel of judgment. He was the one answering for it. And she didn't back down when someone tried to intimidate her. That's what we want to see from our elected officials, even when we disagree with them. That line, delivered by a conservative commentator, summed up a rare moment of bipartisan consensus in modern American politics. It wasn't just praise, it was recognition. Jasmine Crockett had done the impossible. She'd confronted a powerful figure with poise, evidence, and unshakable clarity, and she had won. The fallout for Judge Mathis was swift, severe, and, for many, long overdue. By sunrise the next day, the hashtags #MATTHYSSE, prison money, and hashtag Crockett exposes MATTHYSSE were dominating social media platforms. What had begun as a seemingly routine TV appearance had erupted into a national reckoning. Initially dismissed by some as just another political spat, investigative journalists quickly realized there was more than just smoke. There was fire and inferno of corruption hiding in plain sight. It turned out that the controversial $2.3 million contract with Core Correct Solutions was just the tip of the iceberg. As reporters dug deeper, they uncovered that Judge Mathis's media empire was riddled with financial entanglements. Over the previous 5 years, companies tied to Mathis had received more than $8 million in payments from private prison corporations, bail bond companies, and law enforcement service providers. These weren't passive investments, they were active contracts for consulting, media influence, and public relations strategy. The Detroit Free Press, Mathis's hometown newspaper, dropped a front-page bombshell titled "The Television Judge's Empire Built on Incarceration." The article detailed a shadow network of business dealings that exposed Mathis's dual identity, the on-air moralist who spoke of justice, and the behind-the-scenes profiteer who benefited from a broken system. Public trust shattered. Sponsors that had stood by his courtroom show for over a decade now fled en masse. Within a week, 3 major advertisers, including a national bank and a tech firm, pulled their support, citing ethical concerns and undisclosed conflicts of interest. Ratings, which had been slowly declining for years, took a nosedive, 30% in under 2 weeks. It wasn't just a fall from grace, it was a plummet. And while Mathis scrambled to salvage his reputation, making awkward appearances on The View, CBS This Morning, and even Fox and Friends, his excuses only deepened public mistrust. When Whoopi Goldberg asked him point-blank why he had never disclosed any of his financial relationships, Mathis fumbled, deflected, and ultimately said nothing at all. "Judge," Goldberg responded sharply, "you've built a career on accountability. Don't you think the people deserve to hold you to the same standard?" Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett's stock soared. Her congressional office reported over 50,000 messages of support in just 4 days. Donations to her campaign fund exploded. Though she wasn't up for re-election for 2 more years. But more significantly, the political tides began to shift in her favor. The Second Chance Act amendment, once languishing in Senate limbo, gained 3 new Republican co-sponsors. The Police Accountability and Transparency Act, previously deemed too controversial, suddenly fast-tracked for a floor vote. Her critics, even those across the aisle, were now publicly acknowledging her effectiveness. "What Congresswoman Crockett demonstrated," said Senator John Cornyn of Texas, a staunch Republican, "is that she's not just another politician tweeting from the sidelines. She's prepared, she's sharp, and she does the work." The ripple effects extended far beyond just the 2 individuals involved. The Crockett-Mathis confrontation became a landmark moment in political communication, analyzed in law schools, journalism programs, and campaign war rooms. Harvard's Kennedy School of Government added the full hearing transcript to its leadership and public ethics curriculum. Political strategists broke down Crockett's delivery like football coaches studying game tape. "She turned math experience into a liability," said James Carville. It was a masterclass in rhetorical jujitsu. Media networks took note. MSNBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, and even BBC World News covered the story extensively, not just as a scandal, but as a paradigm shift in how younger politicians were rewriting the rules of public accountability. Even Fox News admitted Crockett's skill. "I disagree with almost every policy she supports," said Tucker Carlson, "but I can't deny she outclassed a man who's been in the game for decades. That's not politics. That's precision." The events also triggered a wave of industry-wide introspection. Television hosts, legal commentators, and pundits were suddenly being asked to disclose their own financial relationships. Media ethics boards convened emergency meetings. The Society of Professional Journalists updated its guidelines to mandate full transparency for personalities with financial interests in the sectors they discuss. For many young leaders, especially women of color, Crockett became a blueprint. Her performance showed that power doesn't always lie with those who have the biggest microphone, the longest tenure, or the fanciest title. Sometimes, it lies with those who simply refuse to be silenced. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, "Jasmine Crockett didn't just stand her ground. She buried it in evidence, lit it on fire, and walked out with her dignity intact." Respect isn't about playing nice, it's about telling the truth, even when it hurts. The generational fault line in American politics had cracked wide open. Leaders like Mathis, symbols of an old guard built on hierarchy and untouchability, now facing a new wave of challengers fluent in data, transparency, and the court of public opinion, and the people were watching. "I request a recess to consult with my attorney," Barr said, his voice noticeably thinner, a crack in the once confident exterior. Without missing a beat, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett leaned in slightly and replied with unshakable calm, "Mr. Barr, the time for lawyers was before you decided to lie to Congress. But you're right about one thing, you're definitely going to need an attorney." What had just unfolded inside that hearing chamber was not simply another routine oversight session. It was a seismic moment in American political history, an extraordinary takedown of one of the most powerful and controversial figures in modern public life. Within minutes, the fallout began. #Barr exposed skyrocketed to the #1 trend on Twitter, and clips of Crockett's.com but relentless presentation, juxtaposed with Barr's unraveling expressions, were being reposted and shared across social media platforms at lightning speed. Political commentators who had originally expected a partisan skirmish were now calling it one of the most devastating congressional hearings since Watergate. CNN broke into their regular coverage with a live, continuous feed from Capitol Hill. MSNBC brought in a panel of constitutional lawyers to unpack the potential legal ramifications. Even Fox News, known for its defense of Barr and aligned political figures, was forced to air Crockett's evidence. Anchors momentarily speechless as the magnitude of her presentation became clear. The recordings Congresswoman Crockett played, carefully curated and strategically timed, were quickly authenticated by independent audio experts. The documents she cited were corroborated by multiple reputable sources. Every fact, every reference, every accusation she presented was being meticulously validated, and not a single one was falling apart under scrutiny. Crockett's case wasn't just airtight, it was bulletproof. The Republican establishment, expecting to use the hearing as a platform to attack Democratic leadership, was now engulfed in crisis. GOP lawmakers, many of whom had long championed Barr as a loyal soldier of their cause, were suddenly being pressed by reporters to explain whether they still stood by him. Several high-profile Republicans who had once defended Barr's integrity were now scrambling to put distance between themselves and the scandal. Senator Lindsey Graham, looking visibly uneasy, told a gaggle of reporters, "If these allegations prove accurate, they represent a serious betrayal of the public trust. The Department of Justice must be impartial above politics and above corruption." Even Trump's most devoted allies began to retreat. Senator Ted Cruz, when asked to comment on the explosive evidence, hesitated before responding. "I haven't heard the full presentation yet, but what's been presented so far is deeply troubling." For Democrats, it was a watershed moment, confirmation of what they had been warning about for years. Speaker Nancy Pelosi issued an immediate call for a criminal referral to the Department of Justice, while Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer demanded that Barr's security clearance be revoked immediately, stating, "This is not just unethical, it's potentially criminal." But the true breakout star of the day was undeniably Jasmine Crockett. Once a relatively low-profile congresswoman from Texas, she was now being heralded as a rising political titan. Her cross-examination was already being compared to the legendary Senate interrogations of Joseph McCarthy, the Watergate hearings, and the Iran-Contra investigation. Former President Barack Obama tweeted, "What Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett did today is what accountability looks like. In this country, no one, not even the powerful, should be above the law." As the hearing played out, the internet erupted in ways rarely seen. TikTok users posted side-by-side clips comparing Barr's smug entrance to his steadily unraveling expressions. One viral video set to swelling orchestral music depicted a slow zoom on Barr's face as each piece of evidence hit like a hammer. It had over 2 million views within the first hour. Instagram was flooded with infographics and breakdowns of the timeline Crockett had presented. One carousel post showed Barr's congressional testimony denying knowledge next to redacted emails he had personally signed. Reddit's Our Politics thread hit over 50,000 comments in less than 2 hours, with users providing legal analysis, background context, and praise for Crockett's composure and precision. Meanwhile, YouTube political analysts launched live with titles like "Crockett Destroys Barr Legal Fallout Explained" and "This is what a congressional hero looks like." Chat rooms moved too fast to moderate. Even international media outlets picked up the story with urgency. The BBC described it as a rare moment of bipartisan reckoning. Al Jazeera dubbed it America's new political earthquake. Across Europe, news anchors marveled at the sheer scale and competence of Crockett's performance. Rachel Maddow opened her MSNBC show that evening by saying, "I've covered American politics for 3 decades. What Jasmine Crockett did today wasn't just rare, it was revolutionary." The Atlantic published a column by conservative commentator David Froome, who wrote, "Regardless of your politics, the evidence presented today paints a troubling picture of a man who may have knowingly abused his position and misled Congress." Even the Wall Street Journal's editorial board, typically aligned with conservative interests, issued a stunning rebuke. "What Representative Crockett presented today deserves serious investigation. This cannot be dismissed as political theater. Demands a response." Within hours, former federal prosecutors were on every major network explaining the potential charges Barr could face: obstruction of justice, perjury, and even conspiracy. Former U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara tweeted, "Based on today's hearing, Bill Barr should be extremely concerned. What we witnessed wasn't political grandstanding, it was an evidence-backed demolition. The statute of limitations hasn't expired on many of these acts. A criminal investigation is not just possible, it's probable." The days that followed only deepened the fallout. What had begun as a routine oversight hearing had become one of the most explosive reckonings in modern political history, and it was Jasmine Crockett, armed with the truth, prepared beyond imagination, and undeterred by power, who had lit the fuse. Despite their best efforts, Bill Barr's legal team struggled to contain the political and legal firestorm that followed the hearing. His attorney released a carefully worded statement, claiming the damning recordings had been taken out of context and that Barr had always operated within the boundaries of the law. But the statement did little to stop the damage. In fact, it only deepened public suspicion. When reporters pressed for clarification demanding to know what the context was that could possibly justify the statements in the recordings, Barr's team had nothing concrete to offer. Their claim that the audio had been selectively edited collapsed when independent forensic analysts confirmed the recordings were complete, authentic, and untouched. For a man who had once eagerly taken to cable news to defend himself at every turn, Barr's sudden disappearance from public view was telling. Multiple scheduled media appearances were quietly canceled. Major news outlets reported that he declined interview requests across the board. Bill Barr, once known for his bold and aggressive public defenses, had gone silent. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett emerged not just as the architect of the hearing, but as its undeniable star. Her meticulous preparation and command of the facts didn't just dismantle Barr's defense, it set a new precedent for congressional accountability. Legal scholars and political analysts immediately began referring to her method as in oversight. Within days, Crockett's name was being floated as a potential U.S. Senate candidate. What had started as a single hearing propelled her into the national spotlight. Political strategists from coast to coast flooded her office with calls, hoping to recruit her or at least learn from her. But Crockett remained grounded. In every interview, she made one thing clear. This wasn't about political theater or personal ambition. It was about restoring the integrity of American democracy. Speaking with Anderson Cooper on CNN, she summed it up in one sentence. My job isn't to be fitness, it's to make sure that powerful people can't lie to the American people without consequences. That quote was replayed on every major network and shared widely across social media. The broader implications were Jasmine Crockett's performance rekindled public faith in the idea that truth still mattered in American politics. In an era saturated with spin, misinformation, and performative outrage, she reminded the nation and its leaders that evidence, when used properly, could still win the day. Within a week, the Department of Justice launched a formal investigation into Barr's conduct. The FBI began interviewing witnesses cited in Crockett's presentation. The House voted to hold Barr in contempt of Congress, and the investigation quickly expanded. It became apparent that the scandal wasn't limited to Barr alone. The recordings revealed communications implicating several other high-ranking officials. From the Trump administration, prosecutors swiftly issued subpoenas to former White House staff, DOJ insiders, and even state-level election officials who had interacted with Barr's team during the 2020 election fallout. One recording Barr call with Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger was especially damning. Legal commentators noted the eerie similarity to Donald Trump's infamous call requesting 11,780 votes. Former federal prosecutor Andrew Weissman explained on MSNBC, "This isn't just about lying to Congress. This could very well be evidence of a criminal conspiracy to interfere with a federal election. The DOJ will have no choice but to pursue this aggressively." With the door now open, congressional investigators also revisited several controversial episodes from Barr's time as Attorney General, including his handling of the Michael Flynn case, his interference in the Roger Stone sentencing, and his role in the violent clearing of protesters from Lafayette Square. Many of these probes had stalled due to lack of cooperation. Now, with Crockett's momentum driving a new wave of oversight, the stonewalling was over. Outside of Congress, professional consequences loomed. The New York and Virginia State Bar Associations both announced ethics investigations, with experts suggesting Barr could face lying to Congress under oath was, as several legal analysts put it, a textbook case for revocation of a law license. And yet, for Crockett, this hearing was not the end, it was merely the beginning. Her office was already preparing new oversight efforts, and whispers in Washington warned that any official considering evasive testimony before Congress had better be prepared. The era of impunity was over. Lying to Congress was no longer a game without consequences. Political campaigns began studying her performance. Like sports teams analyzing game tape, law schools added her questioning strategy to their trial advocacy curriculum. Think tanks and watchdog organizations began replicating her evidence-based framework. What Crockett had achieved wasn't just a political win, it was the establishment of a new standard for integrity and effectiveness in public service. As one commentator on NPR put it, Jasmine Crockett didn't just hold Bill Barr accountable, restored something the American people were beginning to lose: faith in the process. Within weeks, her influence had changed the entire tone of congressional oversight. Gone were the days of partisan grandstanding with no follow-through. Crockett had proven that when preparation meets courage, truth becomes a weapon stronger than political power. And as for Bill Barr, the final question was no longer if he would face consequences. The mountain of evidence made that inevitable. The only real question left was, who would be the next powerful figure to face the fire of Jasmine Crockett's unwavering pursuit of justice? If this moment reminded you that accountability still matters in American democracy, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell, because this battle isn't over, it's just beginning.